My son sold our family farm while I was dying in the hospital. I'm Thomas Anderson, and I thought I'd raised an honest man. Brandon figured he'd inherit everything anyway, so why wait? He had vacation plans with his wife, expensive tastes, and a dying father who'd never know the difference. What he didn't know was that his simple farmer dad had a few secrets of his own, secrets worth approximately $485 million. When I found out what he'd done, I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just made a few phone calls. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. This is a story about family, respect, and what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. It started 3 months ago when my heart decided to remind me I'm not as young as I feel. June 15th, 2024. Providence Medical Center, room 314. The last thing I remember before going under was telling Brandon to take care of the farm. I should have seen the signs earlier. Looking back, they were all there. For months before my heart attack, Brandon had been different, rolling his eyes whenever I talked about the old days, making comments about upgrading our lifestyle. His wife Chelsea was worse. She'd post on Instagram about our farm being that old dump while standing in my kitchen eating my food. The disrespect started small. Family dinner back in April, Brandon interrupted me mid-sentence. "Dad, you're 71. Time to let the younger generation handle things." Handle what things? Everything. The farm, the finances, the future. Chelsea nodded along, recording herself for her Instagram story. 15,000 followers hanging on every word about how they were finally moving forward. I tried to explain that the farm wasn't just about farming anymore, that there were other considerations, other investments. Brandon laughed, actually laughed. "Other investments? Dad, you drive a 2018 Ford pickup. You shop at Walmart. What investments?" Chelsea chimed in from behind her phone. "Babe, your dad's just scared of change." Old people get like that. Old people. I was sitting right there. The second sign came in May. I'd mentioned needing to fly to Seattle for a business meeting. Brandon's reaction was immediate. "What business?" "Dad, you're retired. You grow corn and soybeans." "There are some matters that require my attention." "What matters? Who are you meeting with?" I'd kept my business life separate from farm life for 40 years. Old habit. But Brandon took my privacy as proof of confusion. "Chelsea thinks you might be getting, confused about things. Making up meetings that don't exist." I looked at my daughter-in-law. She was posting another story, this time about dealing with elderly parents who live in fantasy worlds. They thought I was losing my mind. The truth was simpler. I'd built something they couldn't comprehend because I'd never told them about it. Back in 1987, I'd invented an automated soil analysis system. Patent number US 10,789,234. That little invention became the foundation of agritech innovations, but they didn't know that. To them, I was just an old farmer who wore the same John Deere cap every day, who preferred overalls to suits, who paid cash for everything and lived in the same house my great-grandfather built in 1924. They couldn't see past the surface. Brandon started talking about me like I wasn't there. "Chelsea and I have been discussing Dad's situation. We think it's time for some changes." "What kind of changes?" "Power of attorney, for when you can't make decisions anymore. I can make decisions just fine." "Can you? Because yesterday you couldn't remember where you put your keys." I'd put them in my locked office. The office where I kept my computers, my patent documents, and my direct line to Agritech headquarters. But I couldn't explain that without explaining everything else. So I just looked, old and confused. Chelsea kept documenting it all. Our family meetings about Dad's declining health. Her concern for Brandon's inheritance getting mismanaged. The stress of dealing with stubborn elderly relatives. She was building a narrative. I just didn't realize how far she was willing to take it. The night before my heart attack, I overheard them in the kitchen. "The farm's worth at least $3 million, Brandon was saying. Maybe more. So why are we living like we're poor?" Chelsea's voice carried that edge it always had when talking about money. "Because Dad controls everything, and he's never going to change." "Well, maybe something will change that." I thought they were just venting. Young people complaining about inheritance they hadn't earned yet. I had no idea they were planning to speed up the timeline. When I woke up from surgery on June 18th, Brandon was sitting beside my hospital bed with papers. Dad, I need you to sign these. My vision was still blurry from the anesthesia. What are they? Just insurance stuff, medical power of attorney. In case something happens, I should have read them. But my son was holding them, talking about protecting me, making sure I got the best care. What father doesn't trust his own child? I signed. 3 days later, while I was still unconscious from a second surgery, Brandon used that power of attorney to sell our 520-acre farm to Westfield Development Corporation for $1.2 million. Our farm, 4 generations of Anderson family history, gone in one afternoon. The paperwork was dated June 22nd, 3:47 p.m. Brandon had walked into First National Bank of Millbrook Valley with his fraudulent power of attorney and walked out with a cashier's check for $1,200,000. The real value of that land? $3.8 million. I'd had it appraised 6 months earlier for estate planning purposes. Brandon sold it for less than a third of what it was worth. But here's what made it worse. He didn't sell it because he needed money for my medical care. My hospital bills totaled $127,000. I'd paid them myself in cash to avoid burdening the family. He sold it to fund a vacation. By June 25th, Brandon and Chelsea were posting Instagram stories from the Maldives, the Four Seasons Resort, $8,000 per night, swimming with dolphins, champagne breakfasts, sunset dinners that cost more than most people make in a month. Chelsea's post from their overwater villa had the caption, "Finally living the life we deserve." Sometimes you have to take control of your own destiny. #blessed, #millionaire mindset, #living my best life. She tagged the location, she tagged the resort. She even tagged the bottle of champagne. Dom Perignon, $350. While I was learning to walk again in physical therapy, the math was simple. 6 weeks in the Maldives, first-class flights, 5-star accommodations, shopping sprees that Chelsea documented religiously. They'd burned through $96,000 in a month and a half. But that wasn't the real loss. The real loss was trust. The real loss was watching my son celebrate, erasing his family's legacy while his father fought to survive. The real loss was knowing that if I'd actually died, he would have gotten away with it. I found out about the sale on September 12th. I'd been home from rehabilitation for 4 days. I was looking through the mail when I found a letter from Westfield Development Corporation. Thank you for your recent land sale. Construction on Anderson Commons Shopping Center will begin October 1st. Anderson Commons. They were naming their shopping center after our family, the family whose farm they'd just erased. I called the bank. The sale was legitimate. Power of attorney properly executed. All signatures verified. I called Brandon. Oh, that. His voice was casual, like he'd sold a used car instead of 4 generations of family history. Yeah, I handled that while you were sick. Figured it was time. Time for what? Time to liquidate some assets. Dad, you nearly died. Someone had to be practical about our financial situation. Our financial situation. As if he'd been supporting me instead of the other way around. You sold the farm for $1.2 million. It's worth $3.8. According to who? Some county assessor? Dad, I got market value. Westfield Development doesn't overpay for anything. He was right about that. Westfield Development was notoriously cheap. They specialized in buying undervalued rural properties from desperate families. What Brandon didn't know was who owned Westfield Development, but that conversation would come later. For now, I just needed to understand the scope of what he'd done. Where's the money, Brandon? Invested. In our future. Chelsea and I made some moves while you were recovering. Moves. Like 6 weeks in the Maldives was an investment strategy. I want to see the documentation. Dad, you're still recovering. Let me handle the business side of things. That phrase. Let me handle things. The same phrase he'd used at dinner. The same phrase he'd used to justify taking control of my life while I was unconscious. He'd stolen from me. But more than that, he'd stolen my choice. My agency. My right to decide what happened to my own property. And he'd done it with a smile, calling it love. The stakes were clear now. This wasn't about money. It was about whether family meant anything, whether respect existed, whether a man who'd worked his entire life had any right to control his own legacy. Brandon thought he'd won. He had no idea what he'd started. I called him back the next day. September 13th, 2 p.m. Brandon, we need to talk. Dad, I'm at work. Can this wait? He worked for Midwest Farm Supply, regional sales manager, 78,000 a year selling tractors to farmers who actually worked their land. No, it can't wait. You sold my farm. Silence. Then a sigh. Our farm. And yes, I handled that situation. You handled it? I didn't sign anything. You signed the power of attorney. For medical decisions. For financial decisions, too. Chelsea found a lawyer who explained everything. When someone's incapacitated, family has to step up. Chelsea found a lawyer. Of course she did. I wasn't incapacitated. I was unconscious. Same thing legally. It wasn't the same thing. But Brandon had clearly prepared for this conversation. You want to explain why you sold $3.8 million worth of land for 1.2? Where are you getting 3.8? Dad, that's fantasy numbers. County appraisal. Done 6 months ago. County appraisals aren't market value. Look, I know this is hard, but someone had to make the tough decisions. Tough decisions. He was talking like he'd saved the family from bankruptcy instead of stealing from his father. What tough decisions? I have no debt. The farm was profitable. Profitable? Dad, you made maybe 40,000 last year on crop yields. 40,000. He thought that was my only income. There are other considerations. What other considerations? Dad, I've seen your finances. You live on Social Security and whatever the corn brings in. That's not sustainable. He'd seen my finances, my farm finances, not my real finances. You had no right. I had power of attorney. I had every right. His voice was getting sharper. The Respectful Son Act was wearing thin. That power of attorney was for emergency medical decisions. It was for everything. Chelsea made sure of that. There it was. Chelsea made sure this wasn't Brandon's idea. This was a plan. Let me ask you something, son. Did you read the contract before you signed it? What contract? The sale contract with Westfield Development. Of course I read it. I'm not stupid. Good. Then you know who owns Westfield Development. Pause. Longer this time. Some development company. Does it matter? It matters to me. Why? I let the silence stretch. Let him wonder. Dad, you're being paranoid. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're not thinking clearly. Not thinking clearly. The same phrase Chelsea had used. The same phrase they'd probably practiced. I'm thinking very clearly. Are you? Because you sound confused. Look, I know change is hard for old people. Old people. There it was again. I'm not confused, Brandon. And I'm not stupid. I didn't say you were stupid. You sold my land to travel with your wife. We didn't travel. We invested in experiences. There's a difference. Invested in experiences. $8,000 hotel rooms were an investment now. You spent $96,000 in 6 weeks. How do you know that? Instagram. Chelsea documented everything. She documented our vacation. People post vacation photos. People don't usually post receipts. $350 champagne, $5,000 shopping sprees, dolphin excursions. That's our business. It became my business when you used my money to pay for it. Your money? Dad, that money came from the farm sale. The farm you couldn't manage anymore? Couldn't manage. Past tense, like I was already dead. I managed that farm for 40 years. And now it's time for someone else to manage things. Someone else, meaning him. You think you can manage better than me? I think I can manage more realistically. Dad, you were holding on to a property you couldn't afford to maintain, trying to farm land you were too old to work, living in a house that needed $50,000 in repairs. None of that was true. But it sounded good. Sounded reasonable. Sounded like a caring son making hard choices for an aging father. The house is fine. The roof leaks. The foundation has cracks. The electrical system is from the 1970s. He'd obviously prepared this list, probably with Chelsea's help. And you fixed all these problems by selling to developers? I solved the problems by liquidating an asset that was becoming a liability. Liquidating an asset. He was talking like a business consultant instead of a son. Whose asset was it, Brandon? Yours. But you weren't in a position to make rational decisions. Rational decisions. According to him, any decision that didn't involve selling was irrational. And you were? Someone had to be. Someone had to be, or someone wanted to be? What's that supposed to mean? It means you wanted the money. I wanted security. For all of us. Dad, you nearly died. What if you'd had another heart attack? What if you'd needed long-term care? What if the farm had sat empty for years? What if? He was creating hypothetical emergencies to justify actual theft. But I didn't die. But you could have. You could have. I could get hit by lightning tomorrow. That doesn't give you the right to sell my truck today. This is different. How? Because you're not 25 anymore. Because things happen. Because someone has to plan for reality. Reality. His reality, where I was too old, too sick, too confused to control my own life. You want to know about reality, son? I think I know plenty about reality. Do you? Because here's a reality check for you. You didn't just sell my farm. What are you talking about? You sold it to me. Silence. What? Westfield Development Corporation. Check the incorporation papers. Dad, you're not making sense. I'm making perfect sense. You just sold my land to my company. Your company? Dad, you don't have a company. Don't I? You're a farmer. Am I? I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, working through the implications. Prove it, old man. And there it was. The mask finally off. The real Brandon underneath. Prove it, old man. I will. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the same oak table where we'd eaten dinner as a family for 30 years, where Brandon had done his homework, where I'd taught him to play chess, where he'd looked me in the eye and called me an old man. I made coffee, real coffee, not the instant stuff I usually drank. Then I walked to the part of the house Brandon had never seen. My office. Most people don't lock doors inside their own homes, but I'd always kept this room private. Old habit from the early days when corporate espionage was a real concern. The lock was electronic, biometric, fingerprint scanner installed in 1998 when Agritech went public. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it before my heart attack. 3 computers, 2 phones, filing cabinets full of patent documents, SEC filings, and corporate records. The walls covered with framed newspaper clippings I'd never shown anyone. Local farmer invents revolutionary soil sensor. Oregonian, March 15, 1987. Anderson's agricultural innovation secures military contract. Portland Business Journal, June 3, 1992. Agritech Innovations IPO raises $340 million. Wall Street Journal, October 12, 1998. The Invisible Billionaire, Thomas Anderson's Quiet Empire. Forbes, March 8, 2019. 40 years of building something Brandon couldn't imagine, because I'd never told him about it. I'd wanted him to make his own way, build his own success, earn his own respect. Instead, he'd stolen mine. I picked up the secure phone, the one with a direct line to Seattle. Maggie, it's Tom. Margaret Williams had been my attorney for 26 years, corporate law specialist, the woman who'd helped structure Agritech's expansion into 17 countries. Tom, how are you feeling? I heard about the surgery. I'm fine, but I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to reactivate my full authority at Agritech, and I need copies of all Westfield development paperwork. Pause. Westfield? Tom, that's one of our subsidiary companies. What do you need with Westfield paperwork? My son sold my farm to them. Your son sold your farm to us? He doesn't know it's us. Maggie laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, this is good. What did he sell it for? $1.2 million. Jesus, Tom, that property's worth $4 million easy. What was he thinking? He was thinking his old man was too stupid to notice. And now he's about to learn who really owns Westfield Development Corporation. When do you want to do this? Soon. But I want it done right. Public. With witnesses. I love the way you think. What did you have in mind? Town Council meeting, October 3rd. Westfield's supposed to present their development plans for Anderson Commons. Anderson Commons? They're naming the shopping center after our family. The irony is beautiful. What do you need from me? Everything. Incorporation documents, ownership structure, SEC filings, and I want you there. Wouldn't miss it. Tom? Yeah? He really called you an old man? Those were his exact words. Well, he's about to meet a very wealthy old man. After I hung up, I opened my laptop. Password protected, encrypted, connected to Agritech's private network. 847 active patents, 84 international offices, 2,400 employees. Current valuation, $485 million. All of it built from one invention, one soil sensor that could analyze crop yields, mineral content, and moisture levels in real time. I'd spent 40 years turning that sensor into an empire, but I'd lived like a farmer because I was a farmer. The business was just business. The farm was home, until Brandon sold it. Now the business was personal. I opened my email, 43 unread messages from the Seattle office, board meeting requests, acquisition proposals, quarterly reports waiting for my approval. I'd been away for 3 months. The company had continued running without me because that's how I'd built it. But my signature still mattered. My approval still carried weight. My 73% ownership stake still meant I controlled everything. Brandon thought he'd sold the farm to some random development company. He'd actually sold it to me, and he was about to find out what that meant. The town council meeting was scheduled for October 3rd, 7 p.m. at Millbrook Valley Community Center. I hadn't planned to attend, but then I got the call. Mr. Anderson, this is Sandra Mitchell from the town council. We understand your son sold your farm to Westfield Development. That's correct. Well, Westfield has requested to present their development plans at tonight's meeting for Anderson Common Shopping Center. We thought you might want to be there. I'll be there. Great. Oh, and Mr. Anderson, your son Brandon called. He said he'd be presenting on behalf of the family. On behalf of the family, of course he would. I arrived early, 7:15 p.m. The community center held 85 people when packed. Tonight it was about half full. Local farmers, business owners, town council members, the usual crowd for development presentations. Brandon was already there, front row, wearing his best suit. Navy blue probably cost him a month's salary. Chelsea beside him, live streaming everything for her Instagram followers. Good evening, Millbrook Valley, she chirped into her phone. We're here at the town council meeting, where my husband is about to present some exciting news about our family's contribution to the community. Our family's contribution. She was spinning the sale as philanthropy. I took a seat in the back. Brandon didn't see me come in. Council Chairman Pete Morrison called the meeting to order. First item tonight is the Westfield Development presentation regarding the proposed Anderson Commons Shopping Center. Brandon Anderson will present on behalf of the family. Brandon stood up, confident, polished, ready to take credit for selling his father's legacy. Thank you, Chairman Morrison, council members, fellow citizens. He'd practiced this speech, probably with Chelsea coaching him. Tonight represents a new chapter for Millbrook Valley, a chapter where we embrace progress instead of clinging to the past. Clinging to the past. That was me he was talking about. For 4 generations, the Anderson family has farmed 520 acres on the east side of town. Good land, productive land, but farming alone isn't enough anymore. Farming alone isn't enough, according to who? My father, Tom Anderson, spent his life working that land, but at 71, after a serious heart attack, he recognized that it was time for change. He recognized, like I'd made the decision myself. So we made the difficult choice to sell the property to Westfield Development Corporation, not for personal gain, but for community benefit. Not for personal gain. Tell that to the Maldives resort. Anderson Commons will bring jobs to our town, retail opportunities, economic growth, a legacy that serves everyone instead of just one family. The crowd was nodding. It sounded good. Progressive. Forward-thinking. Chelsea was recording everything, whispering commentary to her phone. So proud of my husband for making these tough decisions. Brandon continued. This wasn't an easy choice. Selling family land never is. But sometimes we have to think beyond ourselves. Think beyond ourselves. Like spending 96 grand on vacation was thinking beyond himself. I know some people might question whether this was the right decision. Whether an old farmer should have let go of his life's work. An old farmer. There it was again. But I want to assure everyone that this decision was made with full family consent and careful consideration. Full family consent. I was sitting 20 feet behind him. My father may not be here tonight, but he supports this development 100%. That's when I stood up. Actually, your father is here. The room went quiet. Brandon spun around, face going white. Dad? What are you doing here? Listening to you lie? Chelsea's live stream captured everything. Her follower count was probably spiking. Chairman Morrison looked coast. Mr. Anderson, would you like to address the council? I would. I walked to the front. Brandon was still standing there, frozen. Move aside, son. He moved. I faced the crowd. 85 people watching. Chelsea's phone still recording. My name is Thomas Anderson. I own the farm my son just told you about. Owned. Past tense. Because while I was unconscious in the hospital, he sold it. Murmurs from the crowd. This wasn't what they'd expected. My son told you this decision was made with full family consent. That's false. He forged a power of attorney and sold my property without my knowledge or permission. Brandon found his voice. Dad, you're confused. We discussed this. We discussed it after you'd already sold it. You signed the papers. I signed medical power of attorney, not financial. Chairman Morrison was looking between us like a tennis match. Gentlemen, perhaps this is a family matter that should be discussed privately. No, I said. This is exactly where it should be discussed. Publicly. With witnesses. I turned to Brandon. You want to tell these people what you got for my farm? We got fair market value. How much, Brandon? Dad, the specific numbers aren't... $1.2 million, I said, for 520 acres of prime agricultural land. The crowd was stirring now. That was cheap, even by rural Oregon standards. And you want to tell them what you did with that money? Brandon's jaw was tight. We invested it. In what? Various opportunities. Specifically, Dad, this isn't the place. 6 weeks in the Maldives, $8,000 per night, dolphin tours, shopping sprees, champagne that costs more than most people make in a day. Chelsea had stopped live streaming. This wasn't going according to plan. Brandon tried to regain control. My father is still recovering from major surgery. He's not thinking clearly about complex financial decisions. I'm thinking very clearly. Are you? Because you seem to be making accusations. I'm stating facts. You stole my farm. You lied to this council. And you're standing there taking credit for community service when all you did was fund your vacation. Dad, you're embarrassing yourself. Am I? Let me ask you something, son, in front of all these people. Do you know who owns Westfield Development Corporation? Brandon's face went pale again. Some development company. Which development company? It doesn't matter who owns it. It matters to me, because I want these people to know exactly who you sold my farm to. Dad, stop. Who owns Westfield Development, Brandon? I don't know. You don't know. You sold 520 acres of family land to a company you know nothing about. The crowd was completely silent now. Even Chelsea had put her phone down. You want to know who owns Westfield Development Corporation? Dad, please. I do. The words hung in the air like smoke. Brandon stared at me. What? I own Westfield Development Corporation, 73% stake, incorporated in Delaware, 2019. That's impossible. Is it? You sold my farm to my company, son, for a third of what it's worth. Brandon looked like he'd been hit by a truck. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the crowd. I'd like to introduce someone who can verify what I'm telling you. The community center doors opened. Maggie Williams walked in, carrying a briefcase. This is Margaret Williams, General Counsel for Agritech Innovations. Maggie? She opened her briefcase, pulled out a stack of documents. Ladies and gentlemen, I have here the incorporation papers for Westfield Development Corporation, subsidiary of Agritech Innovations. Thomas Anderson, majority shareholder. The room exploded in whispers. Brandon was still staring at me. You're a farmer. I'm a lot of things, son. But you drive a pickup truck. You shop at Walmart. Yes, I do. You live in the same house that my great-grandfather built. Yes. But how did a simple farmer build a $485 million technology company? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. That's a conversation for another time, Brandon. Right now, we have a more immediate problem. What problem? You committed fraud, and you did it in front of 85 witnesses. The community center was dead silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Brandon was standing there like a statue, still processing what I'd just said. Chelsea had gone completely white, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Chairman Morrison cleared his throat. Mr. Anderson, which Mr. Anderson should I be addressing? The one who actually owns the property, I said. Maggie stepped forward, documents in hand. Professional as always. 26 years of corporate law had taught her how to command a room. If I may, Chairman Morrison, I'd like to present some documentation for the record. She spread papers across the presentation table. These are the incorporation documents for Westfield Development Corporation, filed in Delaware on March 15, 2019. As you can see, Westfield is a wholly owned subsidiary of Agritech Innovations. Murmurs from the crowd. People were leaning forward, trying to see the documents. And this, Maggie continued, is the shareholder registry for Agritech Innovations. Thomas Anderson holds 73% of all shares, making him the controlling owner of both companies. She looked up at Brandon. Which means when you sold your father's farm to Westfield Development, you essentially sold it to your father. But that's... Brandon started, then stopped. That's impossible. Which part is impossible? I asked. That I own the companies or that you sold to me? You're a farmer. I am a farmer. I'm also the founder and majority shareholder of Agritech Innovations, a company that develops agricultural technology for farmers worldwide. Maggie pulled out another document. Perhaps this will help clarify things. She held up a Forbes magazine. March 2019 issue. The cover story, The Invisible Billionaire, Thomas Anderson's Quiet Empire. She opened to the article, started reading. Thomas Anderson prefers overalls to Armani, pickup trucks to private jets, and small-town Oregon to Silicon Valley. But don't let the humble exterior fool you. This 71-year-old farmer has quietly built one of America's most successful agricultural technology companies. Brandon grabbed the magazine, stared at his father's picture on page 42. Current net worth, $485 million, Maggie continued. Built from a single patent for an automated soil analysis system, Agritech Innovations now operates in 17 countries and holds over 800 patents in agricultural technology. The crowd was buzzing now. People pulling out their phones, probably Googling Agritech Innovations. Chelsea found her voice. This is fake. You're making this up, Maggie smiled. Would you like to see the SEC filings? The tax records? The patent documents? She opened her briefcase wider. I brought everything, including the original patent filed by Thomas Anderson in 1987. Patent number US 107-89234, Automated Soil Analysis System. The same system, I added, that Agritech has been licensing to John Deere, Case IH, and New Holland for the past 15 years. Brandon was still staring at the Forbes article. But you drive a 2018 Ford pickup. It gets good gas mileage. You shop at Walmart. They have good prices. You live in a house from 1924. It's a good house. My great-grandfather built it to last. But why? That was the question I'd been expecting. The question that mattered more than the money or the companies or the patents. Because I'm a farmer, Brandon. That's what I've always been. The technology company exists to serve farmers, to make their lives easier, to help them grow better crops with less effort. I looked around the room. Most of these people were farmers. They understood. I didn't build Agritech to get rich. I built it to solve problems. When I invented that soil sensor in 1987, it was because I was tired of guessing about soil quality. I wanted data, real information. But $485 million, Chelsea whispered, is the result of helping farmers make better decisions for 37 years. Every patent, every product, every innovation was designed to make farming more efficient. Maggie pulled out another document. The company's mission statement, written by Thomas Anderson in 1987, to provide farmers with the technological tools they need to feed the world sustainably and profitably. I never changed that mission, I said. Never moved to Seattle. Never stopped farming. Never stopped living like a farmer. But the money goes back into research and development. 90% of Agritech's profits are reinvested in new agricultural innovations. Chairman Morrison was shaking his head. Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, why didn't anyone know about this? Because I didn't want them to know. The moment people find out you have money, they treat you differently. They stop seeing you as a farmer. and start seeing you as a bank account. I looked at Brandon. Case in point. But Dad, if I'd known... If you'd known what? You would have treated me with respect? You would have valued my opinion? You would have asked permission before selling my property? I would have... You would have what, Brandon? Respected me? Loved me? Treated me like family? The room was quiet again. This was getting personal now. You called me an old man. You said I was too confused to make financial decisions. You sold my life's work to pay for your vacation. Dad, I didn't know. You didn't know because you never asked. You never listened. You assumed that because I wear overalls and drive a pickup truck, I must be poor and stupid. Chelsea was crying now, quietly but visibly. You want to know the real tragedy here? I continued. It's not that you sold the farm. It's not even that you stole from me. It's that you did it while thinking you were smarter than me. Brandon was looking at his shoes. Dad, I'm sorry. Are you? Are you sorry you stole from me, or are you sorry you got caught? I'm sorry I made a mistake. A mistake? Brandon, fraud isn't a mistake. It's a felony. That got his attention. Fraud? Maggie stepped forward again. Falsifying a power of attorney document is fraud in the first degree under Oregon law. Selling property without proper authorization is theft in the first degree. Both are Class B felonies. But the lawyer said. What lawyer? Maggie asked. Brandon looked at Chelsea. She was still crying. Some lawyer Chelsea found online. He said the power of attorney covered financial decisions. Did you show him the actual document? No. Chelsea handled that part. Maggie smiled, not a friendly smile. Well, I've seen the actual document. It specifically limits authority to medical decisions only. Financial decisions require separate documentation. But the bank accepted it. The bank made an error. They've already been notified. They're conducting their own investigation. Chairman Morrison was looking overwhelmed. So what happens now? I looked at Brandon, my son, the boy I'd taught to drive a tractor, the man who'd just stolen my life's work. That depends on Brandon. What do you mean? I mean, he has some choices to make. He can cooperate with the legal process, make restitution, and try to rebuild some trust. Or he can continue pretending he's the victim here. Dad, I never meant... You meant to sell my farm without my permission. You meant to take the money and spend it on yourself. You meant to lie to this town council about family consent. But I thought you were going to die. So that made it okay. I thought I was protecting our family's interests by stealing from your family? By securing our financial future. Our financial future. Brandon, you work for Midwest Farm Supply. You make $78,000 a year. Before today, that was your entire connection to our financial future. The number hit him like a slap. He'd probably never told anyone his exact salary. Now, I continued, you're unemployed. What? Agritech Innovations owns 31% of Midwest Farm Supply. As of today, your employment is terminated. You can't do that. I just did. Maggie pulled out her phone. I sent the termination notice an hour ago. Brandon stared at her, then at me. You're destroying my life. I'm not destroying anything, son. I'm just revealing what you built. What I built? A house of cards, built on theft, lies, and disrespect. It was always going to fall down. I just chose when. The room was completely silent now. Even Chelsea had stopped crying. So what happens next? Brandon asked. Next, you're going to learn what consequences look like. I turned to Chairman Morrison. Before we continue, I'd like to make something clear to the council and to everyone here. The room was still silent, waiting. Westfield Development Corporation will not be building Anderson Commons Shopping Center. What? Chelsea's voice cracked. The development is canceled, effective immediately. Brandon found his voice. You can't do that. There are contracts. Legal obligations. Maggie opened her briefcase again. Actually, there are no legal obligations. The sale contract contains a standard 10-day review period. That period expires tomorrow. What does that mean? Chairman Morrison asked. It means Agritech Innovations is exercising its right to cancel the purchase agreement. But the money, Brandon started, will be returned to Westfield Development Corporation, which means it goes back to Agritech, which means it goes back to me. I looked at Brandon. The $1.2 million you spent on vacation, that's still your debt. His face went white again. My debt? You sold property that wasn't yours to sell. You spent money that wasn't yours to spend. The law calls that conversion. Civil law calls it damages. But I don't have $1.2 million. I know, that's your problem. Chelsea was back to crying. But we already spent it. Yes, you did. On a 6-week vacation that cost $96,000. What about the rest? Good question, Brandon. Where's the other $104,000? He was quiet for a moment. Then, investments. What kind of investments? Chelsea started a consulting business. We needed startup capital. A consulting business. I looked at Chelsea, still crying, scrolling through her phone. What kind of consulting does your wife do, Brandon? Social media marketing, influencer strategy, building brand awareness. I nodded. How many clients does she have? It's still early stage. How many clients, Brandon? We're developing the client base. 0 clients, I said. She spent $104,000 on a business with 0 clients. It takes time to build a brand. It takes customers to build a business. Maggie was making notes. For the record, spending misappropriated funds on speculative investments doesn't reduce civil liability. Meaning what? Chelsea asked. Meaning you still owe the money. Whether you spend it wisely or foolishly. I turned back to Brandon. But that's just the civil side. There's also the criminal side. Criminal? Fraud in the first degree, theft in the first degree, both Class B felonies in Oregon. Dad, you're not going to press charges against your own son. Aren't I? The question hung there. You stole from me, Brandon. You forged legal documents. You lied to financial institutions. You committed crimes. But I'm family. Family doesn't steal from family. I made a mistake. You made choices. Multiple choices. Over multiple days. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. Chelsea was scrolling faster through her phone, probably deleting Instagram posts. It won't matter, I told her. Screenshots are forever, especially when they show you spending stolen money. She looked up at me. I didn't know it was stolen. You helped plan it. I helped Brandon make financial decisions for his family. His family. You've been married 2 years. I built that farm over 40 years. But Brandon said you couldn't manage it anymore. Brandon was wrong about a lot of things. I looked around the room. 85 people watching my family fall apart in public. This is what happens when greed meets stupidity, I said. When entitlement meets reality. When you underestimate the wrong person. Chairman Morrison cleared his throat. Mr. Anderson, what are your intentions regarding the property? The farm? It's going back to farming. And the development plans? Cancelled. Westfield Development will restore the land to its original condition. What about the town's development needs? Talk to me in a year. When this is all settled, maybe we can discuss real development. Development that serves the community instead of serving developers. Brandon was staring at me. Dad, what do you want me to do? I want you to face the consequences of your choices. What consequences? Criminal charges will be filed tomorrow morning. Civil lawsuit by the end of the week. For how much? $2.6 million. $2.6 million? The sale was only 1.2. The sale was for 1.2. The actual value is 3.8. The difference is 2.6 million. That's the amount of my damages. But I don't have 2.6 million. I know. I don't have any money. I know that too. So what happens? Asset forfeiture, wage garnishment, bankruptcy, whatever it takes to collect what you owe. Chelsea looked up from her phone. What about our house? Is it paid for? We have a mortgage. Then it depends on the equity, if there's any. What about Brandon's job? He doesn't have a job anymore. What about my business? You don't have a business. You have a website and an Instagram account. The reality was sinking in. They had no money, no income, and no assets. But they had debts, big debts. However, I continued, there is one option. Brandon looked up, hope flickering. Full cooperation with the criminal investigation, complete financial disclosure, public acknowledgement of wrongdoing, and restitution. What kind of restitution? Community service, 1,000 hours, at local farms, learning what actual work looks like, 1,000 hours? 20 hours a week for 50 weeks. You'll learn farming, from the ground up, and if I do that? I'll consider reducing the civil damages to actual expenses, 96,000 instead of 2.6 million. And the criminal charges? That's up to the prosecutor. But cooperation might result in reduced charges. Brandon looked at Chelsea. She was still crying. We don't have $96,000 either. Then you'll make payments. For as long as it takes. Dad, this is my life you're talking about. It's the life you chose, son, when you chose to steal from your family. I turned to Chairman Morrison. I apologize for disrupting your meeting, but I wanted the community to understand what really happened here. No apology necessary, Mr. Anderson. This has been illuminating. I looked at Brandon one more time. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Criminal charges get filed at 9 a.m., with or without your cooperation. Dad, don't call me Dad. You lost that right when you sold my farm? I walked toward the door. Maggie gathered her papers and followed. As I reached the exit, I turned back. Oh, and Brandon, you might want to update your LinkedIn profile. You're going to need a new job. The last thing I heard as the door closed was Chelsea's voice. What the hell are we going to do now? That wasn't my problem anymore. The story hit the Oregonian 3 days later. Billionaire farmer stops son's land fraud. Front page, above the fold, complete with Brandon's mugshot and a photo of our farm. The reporter had done her homework. She'd interviewed town council members, pulled corporate records, and somehow gotten hold of Chelsea's Instagram posts from the Maldives. The photos looked different in newspaper print. More pathetic. Champagne and dolphins while your father recovers from heart surgery doesn't read as well in black and white. Brandon was arrested on October 4th. Fraud in the first degree, theft in the first degree, falsifying documents. The prosecutor added conspiracy charges when they reviewed Chelsea's involvement in planning the scheme. His bail was set at $50,000. He couldn't make it. Chelsea tried to start a GoFundMe. Help Brandon Anderson, victim of family legal conflict. It raised $237 before GoFundMe shut it down for fraud. Local TV picked up the story, then CNN, then Fox News. By the end of the week, billionaire farmer versus greedy son was trending on Twitter. Chelsea's Instagram followers jumped from 15,000 to 47,000, people following her for entertainment value. Watching the slow-motion disaster of her life, she tried to monetize it. Authentic lifestyle content from a real family crisis. Brands weren't interested. Authentic or not, fraud wasn't a good look for sponsors. Brandon pled guilty on November 15th. The prosecutor had offered a deal. 5 years probation, 1,000 hours of community service, and full restitution in exchange for admitting guilt and cooperating with the civil case. He took the deal. Chelsea filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Irreconcilable differences. She kept the ring. I kept everything else. The farm was restored by December 1st. Westfield Development had to remove all survey markers, engineering stakes, and construction permits. Cost them $47,000. I hired 3 local contractors for the work. Millbrook Valley Companies, Millbrook Valley workers. The town council formally apologized to me at their December meeting. I accepted graciously. No hard feelings. They'd been lied to like everyone else. Agritech Innovations established the Anderson Agricultural Scholarship Fund, $2 million endowment, full-ride scholarships for farm kids who want to study agricultural technology. The first recipient was Sarah Mitchell, Chairman Morrison's granddaughter. Straight A's 4-H champion, wanted to study agricultural engineering at Oregon State. I attended her award ceremony, wore my best overalls. Brandon started his community service in January. 20 hours a week at Hendricks Family Farm, 5 miles south of town. Old man Hendricks put him to work mucking stalls, feeding cattle, and repairing fence lines. Manual labor, real farming, no air conditioning, no corporate credit card, no Instagram photo opportunities, just work. The civil case settled in February. Brandon agreed to pay $96,000 in restitution. Payment plan, $500 per month for 16 years. He got a job at the feed store, minimum wage, loading 50-pound bags of grain onto pickup trucks. It was honest work. The first honest work he'd done in years. I saw him there once. March 10th. I was buying seed for spring planting. He looked different, thinner, older, humbler. He nodded when he saw me. I nodded back. We didn't speak, but he loaded my truck without complaint, carried the seed bags himself, treated me like a customer instead of a mark. It was progress. The farm is producing again. Corn, soybeans, and winter wheat. Same crops my great-grandfather grew. Agritech's latest soil sensors are embedded throughout the property. Real-time data on everything growing there. The technology serves the farming, like it should, like it always has. People ask me if I forgive him. It's the wrong question. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about accepting what happened and choosing how to move forward. Brandon chose to steal from his family. I chose to hold him accountable. He chose lies and greed. I chose truth and consequences. Those weren't emotional choices. They were practical ones. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. And family doesn't mean you get to steal from people who love you. Brandon is learning that now, the hard way, but he's learning. Maybe in 10 years, when he's finished paying restitution, when he's completed his community service, when he's learned what honest work actually feels like, we can have a different conversation. Maybe we can rebuild something real. But it won't be built on money or inheritance or family obligation. It'll be built on respect, mutual respect, earned respect, the only kind that lasts. Have you ever had family take advantage of your kindness? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from the people closest to us.